Hello, everyone. I am going to walk you through the directions for your peer-to-peer counseling practical assignment. And the purpose of this project is primarily to give you an opportunity to truly put the skills we've been learning about in class into practice in a way that will allow you further to review your own work and assess your progress. We are only a few weeks into the quarter, so it's really important that you keep in mind that the expectation of this project is not that you are going to be flawless by any means in utilizing MI skills, but more that you are going to be able to look back at your work after completion and after a sincere attempt to utilize many of the skills and strategies we've been using. And in that review, to identify where your strengths are and where you have opportunities to continue to grow. So that is going to be our focus for this project. Now, I'm not going to read all of this word by word, but I am going to try to really break down the specifics for you, but I strongly encourage you to read the directions in full as well. So first, there's sort of an overview of what the project will look like. Because of the number of students in class, we will have one pair. Otherwise, you'll be working in groups of 3. And on this, during class time, this coming Thursday, you will be alternating between 3 different roles: the client, the counselor, and the observer. You will be recording the session for which you are the counselor. And after the session, you will be writing up a transcript of that session, and you will be analyzing the work that you did. You're going to use your Zoom account to record the session to your local device, and then you're going to, as a tool to help you create the transcript, I'm going to encourage you to upload that video somewhere where, in a program where you can get an auto-generated transcript. Microsoft Stream is a product that allows you to do that, and it's free for all Cal Poly students. And I've gotten pretty good feedback from former students, those who have come to me, saying that seemed to work fairly well, but definitely not perfectly. So you will need to do editing. If you prefer, you can use YouTube, which also will generate a transcript. In my experience, it's not as easy to get a great transcript and then cut and paste or copy and paste from that transcript. But if you feel more comfortable utilizing that as a strategy, that's fine as well. You don't need to turn in the video or, a Microsoft Stream file or a YouTube clip. Those things will just be for you to create the transcript, and that's the part you're going to be turning in. We are going to do a test run of recording this coming Tuesday. And so we'll be able to kind of check the technology. So, and it might requiring a bit of playing around. So I'm just going to make sure that you know that as well. If your session doesn't record, you'll need to repeat the process. So this is why it's really important that we test it and figure out the recording capacity. After class, you will, I mentioned already, you'll write up the transcript, and then you're going to do an analysis and a reflection. And I have a separate video walkthrough of that document that you're going to complete. And there are also here on the course page examples of very, very short snippets from 2 of the sections of that document, just so you can kind of see what the completed version will look like. So the next piece of the directions here in blue reminds you that while a focus point of this project is to practice skills, that I strongly encourage you to think of these skills we've been learning as tools, not a checklist of required elements to your session. In other words, don't feel that you are messing up if you forget one of the steps of GAB, or if you, do some evoking before you go back and focus or something like that. The most important thing is that you maintain the spirit of motivational interviewing throughout the session, and that you listen to your client, be sincere in curiosity. Find out what makes your client feel the way he or she does in general and in particular about making the behavior changes that you're talking about. If you are in the moment with your client, curious about them and what will truly be motivating for them in terms of following through on a behavior change, you are going to support your client in moving them forward toward behavior change. I've mentioned in class along the way, yes, these MI tools, we know there's research that shows us that they are particularly helpful with most clients in helping them in setting and achieving reasonable goals. However, they're not the only way to get there. They might be the fastest way to get there, but if you are embracing the spirit of MI, being present in the moment with your client, then you are likely to have a positive impact on your client. And that, of course, is what you're aiming for. I've noted here that you want to bring your own style to your work as a counselor, and hopefully over time and with more practice, you'll find that you're able to marry your own authentic self with more and more of these MI tools. So let's talk more about the specifics of what this project will look like or how it will work. So as a counselor, you're going to work with a classmate who's going to identify a new healthy habit or a no longer useful habit that they want to eliminate. And you are going to help them to start working toward those changes. Your session should run for about 20 to 25 minutes, and so you want to plan the time accordingly. You're ideally going to focus on those 4 key pillars of the spirit of MI, and you're ideally going to guide your client through each process of MI as much as possible. And you want to engage authentically as you would with someone you already know. You don't need to pretend that you've never met your client before. Talk to them as someone that you know, the way we practiced our engaging activity before, and just ask them questions. Even though it's a person that you're familiar with, there are things that you can learn about them and just how things have been going since the last time you connected. You do want to ideally use EPPE and GAB, and so you do want to set a SMART Plus goal with your client, and to the extent possible, utilize the 4 micro skills of MI. But again, if things get missed, just keep moving forward. Don't get stuck. Don't go backwards. Oh, wait, I forgot to ask permission. Let me go back and do that. It's okay. You'll be able to identify that on your assessment. I missed the step of asking permission here, and identify how you could do that differently. So that's kind of your overall role and goal as a counselor. As the client, you want to come into this session having chosen a behavior change that you want to make, again, either to establish a new habit or to eliminate a habit that's not supporting your wellness or not working well for you. You want it to be well-being related, could be health related, and you want it to be something that you've kind of been thinking, I would like to do this differently, but have been struggling to follow through. So it can be related to nutrition or eating, physical activity, stress, sleep, studying, all of these things that I have listed here. It's really important that you identify something that you truly do want to work on. A fake scenario is going to feel forced. It's not going to be productive. If it's a scenario of something that, I want to start eating 1 more piece of fruit a day, and I know I can do that. That's not useful for your client, for your counselor, your peer who's acting as your counselor to practice, right? So you really want to, before coming in on Thursday, it's important that you identify a goal that would be a stretch or a challenge for you and would take effort to follow through on, but it is something that you actually care about doing. And then I'm going to encourage you to follow through on the goal that you set with your counselor. And there may be an opportunity later in the quarter to check in about how that's been going. So that's sort of your role as the client. And then let's talk about when you're in that third position as the observer. In this case, you're going to have a few functions, but one of the primary things is practicing behavioral counts and utilizing the global score process and calculations to really identify how well your peer is doing with MI at this time. So You're going to determine global scores, behavior counts. Sorry, I guess I just said that. You'll make note of significant responses made by the counselor, and you're going to perform summary calculations like we learned about in the Mighty Coding lesson. I encourage you to take a look at that MI scoring document before the activity so you can be taking those behavior count notes more efficiently. I'm pulling it up quickly here. You're being asked to track the time, so you'll know the start and end time. You'll identify some comments where you hear the counselor cultivating change talk, where you hear examples of empathy, that kind of thing. And then after the whole thing is over, and you have a couple weeks before you need to turn this in, so you might want to take some time to reflect, after the fact, but you'll give scores. As the counselor is providing, as the counselor is talking, you'll be making note of where they have utilized any of these MI or non-MI adherent behaviors. So this part with the tally marks you'll do during the session as you're observing it. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's mainly, again, to practice the Mighty coding process and to be able to provide useful feedback to your peer. So do the best you can. If you miss something, it's okay, but try to categorize each counselor response with one of these behaviors, unless it's one of those non-coded comments, something that doesn't really address the session particularly, like, oh, great weather we're having, something like that. Not sure that any of you would say that, but those are the only things that you wouldn't be trying to code, is my point. So again, after the fact, don't try to do it the day of, because that'll slow things down, but after the fact, you're going to translate your behavioral counts and your summary scores into these calculations, and you'll address your assessment of the scores. So, again, looking at, for instance, their reflection to question ratio. If it was 1-to-1, they're doing fair. If it was 2-to-1, they're doing good. If they were somewhere in between, like maybe it was, 1 to, or I guess a better way to look at it is if it was something like 1.5-to-1, they're doing fair, approaching good, that kind of thing. So you'll identify that, and then you're going to note other strengths and opportunities for growth. I strongly encourage you to list here, or if you want, you can even add here along with the tally marks, or kind of write it in at the bottom, but to put a few examples of specific things you heard. What was a complex reflection that you heard that was really effective? Where was there an affirmation? Because again, usually we won't hear a lot of those. So really try to identify the specific things that your peer did well, so that they can recognize those things, validate a little bit, maybe throw in your own affirmations, and then also help them to see some things that maybe could have gone a little bit better. So that's your role as the observer. You're also asked to track the time as the session is going on, have some kind of signal to let them know when they're getting close to the time to wrap up. That also lets them know, if they haven't seen the signal yet, that they should continue to kind of keep working, not get to the end too quickly. And then you'll share your overall sort of general feedback, not reporting on numbers, but maybe you'll say, yeah, you used about half of your reflections were complex, something like that. And so you'll have a little bit of time after the session is over to provide that feedback. And so I've really walked you through all the steps here. The counselor will start the recording. The observer will start the timer, let the counselor know it's time to start. The counselor will kind of walk through the typical MI steps. And I've written that out here. Again, remember, don't pretend you don't know your client. Engage with them in a way that you would someone that you have, some kind of knowledge of or interaction with. The observer will give a signal when 15 minutes have passed. That's when the counselor should know, if they haven't yet, to start moving into planning. You probably shouldn't be too close to moving into planning before that, because you really want the session to be at least 20 minutes long. Give another signal at 20 minutes if it hasn't wrapped up yet, because you want to have it not go more than 25 minutes. And afterward, respectfully and without judgment, the observer primarily will lead the debrief discussion, but I encourage very strongly that the client provide some feedback as well. Only after all of that will the counselor stop the recording. This way they get some feedback from other people about what went well and what suggestions they had. And then again, you'll repeat the process with everyone switching the roles, and then you'll do that one more time. I've got some notes here about grading. As I mentioned before, you'll be evaluated not on how well you used all the MI skills, but on how well you're able to recognize the extent to which you use the MI skills and where there were missed opportunities. So I'm really looking at thoughtful and critical analysis. So the highest point values are going to be given to submissions that demonstrate quality of insight. And I've noted here, as well as in the other document, I believe, that it does not help your grade to be over complimentary or overly critical of yourself, and that being honest in your self-assessment, that is, first of all, going to help you grow as a counselor, and also going to demonstrate to me that you truly do understand these concepts and how to apply them. I'm not going to go through all of these point values for each piece, but you'll be able to see here the scores and how they are associated with each section of the project. I will note you get 10 points for the form that you complete when you're the observer, and all of the remaining points are earned from the document you submit about your own transcript and reflection of your own work as the counselor. I also want to point out that if you add up all the points here, you'll see that they're worth 160 points. Now, the project itself, in terms of the total points for the class, is worth 150. So what that means is I have built in 10 extra credit points here. So you have a chance to do really well on this project, maybe even get over 100%, but there's room to have little mistakes or things that you missed here and still do well. But again, I will tell you that students who do well on this project, who do the best on this project, are those who really take the time to sift through it very carefully, often to look at it more than once, and to give critical reflection, really be thoughtful about your work, about how you can continue to progress, but also recognizing what you're doing well. So you're very strongly encouraged to utilize the discussion board to ask any questions that you have about this project, because we don't have time to get too deep into the directions in class. So the discussion board will be the main place where I'm going to ask you to reach out if there's anything that's unclear or you'd like more detail on. I'm looking forward to seeing your work completed on this project, and thanks for your time in listening to all the directions.